Hey, have you ever heard someone say I'm lying? It sounds simple, right? But what if I told you that one little sentence could mess with your entire understanding of truth and logic? Imagine this. If someone says they're lying, does that mean they're telling the truth? Or are they lying about lying? It's called the liar paradox, and it's one of the most mind-bending puzzles out there. Stick around, because we're about to dive into why this paradox has been stumping philosophers for centuries. And trust me, it's a lot more than just a fun brain teaser. The liar paradox. Hey there, let me take you on a wild journey into a thought-provoking paradox that has intrigued thinkers for centuries. It's called the liar paradox, and it's as simple as it is baffling. Picture this. Someone says I'm lying. Now, at first, that sounds pretty clear-cut, right? But when you stop and think about it, it gets super tricky. If they're lying, then the statement I'm lying must be true, which means they aren't lying. But if they're telling the truth about lying, well then they're lying. Do you see the problem? It's a perfect loop, where the truth and lies are dancing around each other in an endless cycle. The cool part? This paradox doesn't just make us question simple truths. It also messes with how we think about logic and language itself. You might think, okay, this sounds like some brain teaser from a philosophy class, but trust me, it's far more than that. This paradox forces us to reconsider the very nature of truth, what it means to lie, and how we define both in a world where language is constantly evolving. In a way, this paradox challenges our mental boundaries. So, let's dive deeper into why such a simple statement, I'm lying, can stir up so much confusion. Buckle up because things are about to get interesting. Historical background. Let's rewind the clock to the 4th century BC, where the seeds of the liar paradox were first planted. Enter Epimenides, a philosopher from Crete, who famously declared, "All Cretans are liars." At face value, this sounds like a simple observation about his fellow countrymen. But it's far more profound than that. Imagine being told that everyone in your community is a liar. Does that mean Epimenides himself is lying, or does it confirm that he's telling the truth? The paradox here is that if all Cretans lie, then Epimenides' statement about all Cretans being liars must itself be a lie, making the statement true, which of course creates an endless cycle of contradictions. This paradox has haunted philosophers and logicians ever since. Over the centuries, the liar paradox has popped up in various forms, shaking our understanding of truth in language and logic. Some of the greatest minds, including Aristotle, tried to tackle this puzzle, but it wasn't until much later in the 20th century that formal logic started offering frameworks to address it. But this paradox is more than just a mental puzzle. It's a reminder that language, truth, and logic don't always align neatly. We're still asking, what happens if someone says they're lying? And that's exactly what makes the liar paradox so intriguing and timeless. Understanding the paradox. Alright, now let's break it down. Imagine you're having a conversation with someone, and they casually say, "I'm lying." Seems pretty harmless, right? But wait, there's a catch. If this statement is true, then they must actually be lying. But hold on a second. If they're lying, then their statement, "I'm lying," can't possibly be true. It's like a classic catch-22. If the statement is false, then they must actually be telling the truth, which would mean they're not lying. Now you see where the paradox comes in? It's like trying to untangle a knot that just keeps getting tighter the more you pull. Here's the crazy part. This paradox doesn't just mess with logic. It messes with our understanding of truth itself. What does it mean to lie? And what does it mean to tell the truth? If someone says I'm lying, are they truly lying, or are they just caught in a loop that doesn't allow us to make sense of what's being said? Philosophers and mathematicians have long been fascinated by this paradox because it doesn't fit neatly into the boxes of truth and falsehood that we rely on every day. It's a reminder that language is more complicated than we think, and that sometimes even the simplest statements can leave us scratching our heads. Philosophical implications. The liar paradox isn't just some quirky puzzle to scratch your head over. No, it goes much deeper, poking at the very heart of philosophy and our understanding of truth. See, this paradox calls into question something fundamental. How can we trust language and logic if they can break down in this way? What does it say about our systems of reasoning when a simple statement like, "I'm lying," can cause such a mess? Philosophers have long debated the implications of self-referential statements, those that refer to themselves. The liar paradox is a prime example of how self-reference can create huge complications. It challenges our assumptions about truth by showing us that some statements can't easily be classified as either true or false. If we were to believe everything that's either true or false, we would miss the complexity of language and logic that lies somewhere in between. In a world where logic and reasoning are supposed to be absolute, the liar paradox is like a giant question mark, throwing everything we think we know into doubt. And that's exactly why it's so important. By grappling with this paradox, we're forced to rethink the boundaries of truth, language, and reason itself. It shows us that sometimes things can't be simply boxed into neat categories. Maybe, just maybe, the truth is more complicated than we've ever realized. Proposed resolutions. So how do we get out of this logical mess? How can we make sense of a statement like "I'm lying"? Over the years, scholars have offered several intriguing resolutions to the liar paradox. Let's dive into a few of them. One of the most famous approaches is Tarski's hierarchical solution. Alfred Tarski, a brilliant logician, proposed that we should separate statements about truth into different levels or hierarchies. In simple terms, statements like "I'm lying" should exist in a higher logical level, distinct from the language they describe. This means that when we discuss the truth of a statement, we are talking about something in a different logical layer, avoiding the direct self-reference that causes the paradox. Tarski's solution essentially says, let's just not allow self-referential statements at all, but not everyone agrees with this. Enter dialetheism, a fascinating philosophical view that takes a more radical approach. Dialetheists accept that some statements can be both true and false at the same time. This paradox, in their eyes, doesn't need to be resolved. It simply exists in a contradictory state. In their world, contradictions aren't something to avoid, but something to embrace. And then there's the idea of fuzzy logic, which takes a different angle altogether. Rather than insisting on truth or falsehood, fuzzy logic proposes that truth exists on a spectrum, with varying degrees of truth and falsehood. In the fuzzy world, a statement like "I'm lying" might not be either fully true or fully false, but somewhere in between. Each of these ideas challenges traditional logic, showing us just how much we still have to learn about truth and language. In a way, these resolutions push us to rethink what we consider logical or rational. So, which one do you think is the right answer? Or maybe the paradox just doesn't need solving after all. Modern relevance. You might be wondering, okay, this is a cool philosophical puzzle, but why should I care? Well, it turns out the liar paradox isn't just some ancient brain teaser, it's still incredibly relevant today. From computer science to artificial intelligence, this paradox pops up in surprising places. Take programming, for example. When designing artificial intelligence or creating algorithms, engineers often have to deal with self-referential systems. If a machine or program refers to itself, similar to how the liar paradox works, it could get stuck in an infinite loop, unable to function properly. This makes resolving the paradox crucial in building reliable systems. It also raises important questions about truth in technology. How do we ensure that our machines understand the concept of truth, especially in a world filled with contradictions? And it's not just about machines. In linguistics, self-referential paradoxes like this one force us to reconsider how we process language and meaning. What does it mean when we say something about ourselves, and how does language reflect, or fail to reflect, reality? The liar paradox also offers a powerful metaphor for the ambiguities of modern life. In a world where truth is increasingly blurry, think about politics, media, or social media, this paradox can serve as a reminder that things are rarely as simple as they seem. The more we grapple with statements of truth and lies, the more we see that sometimes, our world is full of contradictions that we can't easily resolve. So, while the liar paradox might have started as a philosophical puzzle, it now touches everything from computers to language and even the very nature of truth in today's society. It's not just a riddle, it's a reflection of our increasingly complex self-referential world. And there you have it, the mind-bending liar paradox. What do you think? Is there a simple solution, or is it a mystery we'll never fully unravel? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, I'd love to hear your take. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to InnoVision Tech for more thought-provoking content. Stay curious and keep exploring the world of technology and logic with us.